you hear me? Good morning. My name is Annie. I am child number 2, daughter number 1 of Tong and Daisy. First, I'd like to, on behalf of the family, I'd like to thank all of you for being with us today and for being with us through the week. Your presence, your prayers, your messages, your hugs meant the world to us, so thank you. All right. A few years ago, I listened to an interview with a funeral director who was asked, what makes a good funeral? His answer was that there are only 4 things needed. There must be a dead person, and today, Dad volunteered. There must be mourners, that's us. There must be a place to consign the dead, a hole or a niche, which we'll see later, so the living can return to life itself. And finally, there must be stories, not just facts like Dad loved balut or he was always among the top 10 congressmen. There must be stories that measure a life, that tell us how one person chose to use his time, and in turn, make us reflect on what we're doing with ours. This week, the stories flowed in eulogies, posts, and conversations. Of course, we heard the heroic stories of how a precocious boy from Bataan became student council president at Ateneo, earned a scholarship to Harvard, and returned home to first be a businessman and then to serve. Stories of how, as a congressman, he authored laws that changed the country. We heard stories of how he transformed Subic for the 21st century, and then later in life, created a university and a resort that celebrated nature. These were big, awe-inspiring stories of achievement and vision. However, during the wake, what especially moved me was seeing Dad's former driver, Mang Juanito, there. And he made the long commute from Bicol to Bataan to be there and stand among the dignitaries that came to pay their respects. What also moved me was seeing Dad's staff, his aides, his secretaries, and household help, some of them from deep in his past, show up in full force, hug us, and sob into our shoulders. There was something about Dad that elicited such devotion and loyalty. He was so loved. And I thought that this thing that elicits loyalty is not found in the big, sweeping stories of achievement. These stories invoke admiration and respect, yes, but they're not necessarily the stuff that cultivates such fidelity. What stirs the soul and inspires the tears are the smaller stories that we heard. And let me share some of them, of others and my own. Dad had a faulty memory in his later years. When I'd ask him what he had for lunch, he'd pause and say, I guess it's not worth remembering. But what he did remember, he remembered. He could rattle off the names of every teacher he had from first grade, including the American Jesuits who tried to get rid of his Bataan accent. Say, bad, not bud. Say, sad, not sud. A few years ago, a small elderly woman came to the resort. I watched Dad look at her, cock his head, and ask, Miss Diaz? I'm raising 4 children as a single mother. I never asked him directly for money, but he knew I needed help, and so what he did was he visited the restaurant all the time, brought friends there, and held meetings there. And Dad also never forgot who helped him. He always told us, a debt of gratitude is never, ever repaid. If someone lends you 100 pesos, your debt is not repaid when you pay him back the 100. your debt continues ad infinitum. And this he lived by. While his tuition in Harvard was covered by a scholarship, he relied on his older brother, Tito Pito, for rent and food. Tito Pito would send proceeds from the family's rice harvest. Decades later, Tito Pito, as mayor of his town, was killed by political rivals. And without second thought, Dad upturned his comfortable life in the private sector and ran for Congress in Tito Pito's honor. And this appreciation flowed on to the next generation, where he took care of Tito Pito's children or cousins as his own. There were stories from his team, from Kaloy and Kuya Joel and Lorna, those who worked with him, of Dad working them hard. They worked long hours, often from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., hiked up and down mountains for ocular inspections, being eaten alive by mosquitoes and flying leeches. But while Dad worked them hard, he was in the trenches with them. And because of this, and because of his wisdom and kindness as a leader, they were happy to work for him. Dad always made it a point to stay in touch with people. When Tonito was out of the country for 2 weeks, Dad would call Tonito's kids every day. The conversation would be the exact same one from day to day. After a few days, Lex and I were able to recite it together with him on Dad's side. Hi, Soph. How are you na, Iha? What you doing? Did you talk to your dad today? What grade are you in na? Okay, Iha. And he'd hang up and say, see? How hard is it to check in on people? Whenever he'd visit Bataan, even long after his political stint, he made unannounced visit to friends, former staff, and aides. These visits could last anywhere between 3 minutes to 3 hours, shooting the breeze, catching up on local politics, and eating. There was nothing he liked better than telling stories over food. Dad was amusing company. He was joyful, he was light, and to Mom's frustration, sometimes somewhat embarrassing. At the resort, if we couldn't find him, we knew exactly where he was, sitting by the bonfire with the guests, telling stories, and eating their food. Mom would send someone over to apologize and to extract him from the scene, but it was the guests who insisted that he stay with them. And recently, at a wake, Jane, the caregiver, said, while in conversation with someone, he picked up a balut without thinking of how messy it was going to be. No plate, no napkin. He cracked it open, juice dribbled down his chin and his shirt, and he was holding the shell, and Mom, again, out of frustration and embarrassment, sent Jane to clean him up. To Mom's frustration, Dad couldn't have cared less about etiquette and protocol. We joked that she can kiss her dream of being a diplomat's wife goodbye. Her husband was not diplomat material. He eats before his hosts. He didn't care about what he wore. We would get panic texts from Tonito. Dad is in this Harvard event. He's in shorts and hiking boots. Can someone pick him up and change him? My cousin would say, whenever Tito Tong comes over, we tell her she was off duty for the day because Tito Tong would clean the floor with his pants. And he loved holding hands. He held her hands all the time. In fact, one time on the way back from Bataan, my partner Javier, who was here, sat next to Dad in the van. Next thing he knew, Dad, asleep, reached over to hold his hand. And Javier, the good man that he is, let him. They sat there, hand in hand, until Dad woke up. And these are just a few of the little stories that we tell each other when we remember him now. These are the stories that make us laugh, that make us cry, and that make us miss him. The way that he was so naughty, the way that he was wise, the way that he was always present in our lives, the way he was funny without trying to be, the way he was kind and caring, and the way he was sometimes embarrassing. These stories are not stories that land in history books to be passed on through the generations. Rather, they are told on the sidelines and tend to fade with time. But they are worth telling because for now, they are the stories that are lodged in the hearts of those who had the great fortune of knowing Dad. And we, as his family and his friends, as we return to normal life, and as we reflect on how to live the rest of it out, we might catch ourselves worrying about the larger story of our achievements. But let's not forget that it is through the smaller stories where Dad touched our hearts and where we might touch others too. Dad, thank you for sharing your life with us. We are so lucky to have shared this lifetime with you. And I'm telling you now, I'm not going to fit in your shoes. It's going to take 3 lifetimes to do that. But I'm writing my own story in honor of your great, great one. Thank you. I'm going to miss you and love you. And I think does anyone else want to say anything?
Dad, Dad was the most kindest man that anybody could possibly know. When he was studying, my father-in-law sent him to Colombia and to study the to study for the education of the university because then nobody else can possibly take care of the school. Father, my father took care of of um, what's this? Taking care of the education of the school. Nobody else can possibly take care of that school. So my lolo, my grandfather, sent him there, and who took care of us? But my father, my own father, was the ano yun? He was the caregiver of us. He took care of us because my father was, there was no caregiver except my father. So what happened was he took care of us. So one time, huh? No, I want to talk being uh, the school's administrator, he, he, he was ready to run the university. And it was my father who sent, who was made the dean of the college of, of, uh, huh? The dean of the college of, the college of, yeah, he was in the college of law. He was only the, the dean of the college of law. Lawfully, very ano siya, wala siyang, wala siyang credentials except the being, yes, Dad, yes, Daddy.